My father called me selfish in front of 300 people the same night I was being promoted to run the company he had begged me to help save. He didn't know the woman standing at the podium was me. He didn't know his loan application, my brother's bailout request, and my mother's desperate messages had all landed on my desk 2 weeks earlier. And he definitely didn't know the only reason I survived long enough to stand there was because my grandfather once pressed $390 into my hand and whispered, "Go, before they convince you that being used is the same thing as being loved." Welcome back to Chanel, where anonymous stories are shared after the lights go out. And sometimes the truth is uglier than the lie people ask you to accept. Before we get into tonight's confession, I want to ask you something. If your own family humiliated you for years, then came back only after they found out you had money, would you help them? Or would you finally let them face the silence they taught you to survive? My name is Sophia. I'm 32 years old, and 7 years ago, my family called me ungrateful because I refused to empty my savings account for them. That night, I left with one backpack, an old winter coat, and $390 from my grandfather. Last month, I stood in a ballroom full of executives, investors, reporters, and employees, while my father tried to rewrite my life in real time. And for the first time in my life, I let him finish. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay quiet long enough for people to expose exactly who they are. I grew up in a family where love always came with receipts, but only when they wanted something from me. My older brother Daniel was the golden child, charming, loud, athletic, and somehow every mistake he made became a family emergency everyone else had to fix. When Daniel wrecked my mother's car at 19, my parents said, "He's young, he needs support." When he dropped out of community college after one semester, they said, "College isn't for everyone, he's entrepreneurial." When he borrowed money and never paid it back, they said, "Don't hold grudges, family helps family." But when I worked double shifts at a diner to pay for business classes, my father said, "Don't act like you're better than us because you read textbooks." My mother was softer with her cruelty. She didn't yell much. She sighed. That was her weapon. She would look at me across the kitchen table and say things like, "Sophia, your father worries about your attitude." Or, "You make it hard for people to help you when you're so defensive." Defensive usually meant I had said no. No to paying Daniel's overdue phone bill. No to skipping an exam so I could drive my aunt to an appointment. No to handing over the emergency fund I had built penny by penny while they praised my brother for trying to find himself. The worst memory happened on my 25th birthday. I had saved almost $4,800. It wasn't much to some people, but to me, it was freedom. It was 3 months of rent somewhere else. It was tuition for one more semester. It was proof I could build something nobody could take from me. Daniel had started a premium car detailing business, which mostly meant renting expensive equipment, posting motivational quotes online, and blaming customers for not understanding his vision. He owed money on a van, supplies, and a private loan from one of my father's friends. At dinner that night, my mother brought out a grocery store cake with my name spelled wrong in blue frosting. Sofia. Daniel laughed and said, "Even the cake knows you're difficult." Everyone chuckled. Then my father cleared his throat. "We need to talk about something serious." I knew immediately. My stomach dropped before he even said it. "Your brother needs help," he said. Daniel leaned back like this was a business meeting and not my birthday dinner. "How much?" I asked. My mother looked disappointed that I didn't ask what happened first. "Don't start like that," she said. "This is your family." My father said, "4,000 would keep him from losing the van." I stared at him. "That's almost all my savings." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Savings for what? Another class? Be realistic, Sophia. You're not exactly going to become some CEO." The table went quiet. Not because it was cruel, because everyone was waiting to see if I would make it awkward by reacting. My father pointed his fork at me. "Your brother is trying to build something. You live at home and work a little waitress job. You have no real responsibilities." "I pay rent here," I said quietly. He snorted. "A few $100s doesn't make you independent." I looked at my mother. She looked down at her plate. I said, "No." That one word changed everything. My father's face hardened. "Excuse me?" I said no. I'm not giving Daniel my savings. Daniel pushed his chair back. "Wow, on your birthday too, making everything about you." My mother whispered, "Sophia, please don't embarrass us." That sentence broke something in me. Not Daniel's insult, not my father's anger. My mother asking me not to embarrass them while they sat around the cake with my name spelled wrong and demanded the money I earned serving strangers until my feet went numb. My father stood up. You are selfish. You are ungrateful. After everything we did for you, you can't help your own brother? Something in my chest went cold. What exactly did you do for me? I asked. The room froze. My father stepped closer. You live under my roof. I pay rent. You eat my food. I buy groceries. You think you're better than us now? I shook my head. No, I think I'm tired. He pointed toward the hallway. Then get out. If you want to act grown, go be grown. But don't come crawling back when you realize the world doesn't care about your little dreams. Nobody stopped him. Not my mother, not Daniel, not my aunt pretending to check her phone. Only my grandfather moved. My mother's father, Grandpa Eli, was 81 then. A quiet man. Former bus mechanic. Bad knees. Same brown cardigan every winter. He rarely spoke at family gatherings because my father treated silence like agreement, and Grandpa Eli had learned that arguing with proud men only gave them more stage. He stood slowly and said, That's enough, Frank. My father laughed. Stay out of this. Grandpa Eli looked at me. Get your things. I packed one backpack while my mother cried in the living room like I was the one hurting the family. Daniel muttered that I was dramatic. My father stood by the front door with his arms crossed, making sure I understood I was being removed, not leaving. Outside, the air was freezing. Grandpa Eli walked me to his old Buick, opened the glove compartment, and pulled out an envelope. I don't have much, he said. It's $390. I started crying immediately. I can't take this. Yes, you can. Grandpa. He squeezed my hand. Sophia, listen to me. Some families don't break you with hate. They break you by making you prove your love until there's nothing left. Go before they convince you that being used is the same thing as being loved. That was the last thing he said to me before I left town. Let me know in the comments. Would you forgive someone who only respected you after they found out you had money? Because I thought about that question more times than I can count. The first year away was ugly. Not inspiring, not cinematic. Ugly. I drove 6 hours to a city where nobody knew me and slept in my car behind a 24-hour grocery store for 3 weeks. I showered at a cheap gym. I kept clothes in trash bags in the trunk. I worked breakfast shifts at a diner, evening shifts cleaning offices, and overnight inventory twice a week at a discount store. There were nights I sat in my car with a fast food cup of ice water and wondered if my father had been right. Maybe leaving with $390 and a backpack wasn't brave. Maybe it was stupid. But every time I almost called home, I remembered my mother looking down at her plate. I remembered Daniel saying I would never become anything. I remembered my father's voice. Don't come crawling back. So I didn't. I enrolled in night classes at a community college under a payment plan that made me nauseous every month. I studied business administration because numbers calmed me. Numbers didn't sigh at you. Numbers didn't call you selfish. Numbers told the truth if you were willing to look closely. At the diner, I met Marlene. She was in her 50s, managed the place, smoked too much, and had the kind of tired kindness that didn't ask for applause. She noticed I volunteered to close because it meant a free meal after the kitchen shut down. One night, she caught me copying accounting formulas onto receipt paper during my break. You in school? She asked. I nodded. For what? Business. She looked around the diner, then back at me. Good. Learn how money moves. People lie. Money usually doesn't. Marlene became the first person in my new life who didn't treat my ambition like an insult. She let me use the office computer after closing. She showed me vendor invoices. She taught me how restaurants lost money through small leaks no one respected until the whole place was drowning. Spoiled produce, bad scheduling, untracked discounts, managers giving away inventory to friends. You see patterns, she told me one night. That's not small. I cried in the walk-in freezer after she said that. Not because it was dramatic, because nobody in my family had ever said I was good at something without needing something from the afterward. If stories like this keep you watching until the truth finally comes out, make sure you're subscribed, because this one gets worse before it gets better. I finished my associate degree, then transferred to an online state university program. I moved from my car to a rented room in a house with 2 nurses and a guy who played drums badly at midnight. I kept working. I kept studying. I stopped checking blocked messages. Grandpa Eli and I stayed in touch through letters. Real letters. He didn't like texting. He said phones made people careless with words. Every month or so, I got an envelope with his shaky handwriting. Sometimes he sent newspaper clippings about women running companies. Sometimes he sent $5, which made me cry, because I knew he probably skipped something for himself to send it. In one letter, he wrote, "Don't become hard. Become clear. There's a difference." I taped that above my desk. 3 years after I left, Marlene recommended me for an entry-level operations coordinator position at a regional hospitality company called Meridian Harbor Group. They owned restaurants, boutique hotels, event spaces, and food service contracts. I almost didn't apply. The job required a degree I hadn't finished and experience I didn't think counted. Marlene stood behind the diner counter and said, "Sophia, men with half your brain apply for jobs they can't spell. Send the resume." So I did. I got the interview. Then I got the job. At Meridian, I learned fast. I found billing errors. I redesigned inventory tracking for 3 locations. I stopped a vendor overcharge that had been bleeding nearly $18,000 a month across multiple properties. The CFO noticed. Then the COO noticed. Then the CEO noticed. His name was Julian Vance. Before anyone assumes this is a fairy tale where a powerful man saved me, it wasn't like that. Julian was intimidating, smart, and wealthy, yes. But he didn't hand me a life. He handed me harder work because he realized I could handle it. The first time I presented in a leadership meeting, my hands shook so badly I kept them under the table. Julian asked one question after my report. "Are these your findings?" "Yes." "Then don't apologize before you explain them." That became another sentence I carried with me. Over the next 4 years, I rose from coordinator to regional operations director, then vice president of strategic operations. I finished my degree. I paid off my debts. I bought a small house with a porch and a lemon tree in the backyard. Julian and I became close slowly. He knew pieces of my family story, not all of it. He never pushed. If a family-themed holiday ad came on and I went quiet, he changed the subject. If I froze when someone raised his voice, he lowered his. When he proposed, he did it in my kitchen while we were eating takeout noodles because he said that was where I looked most like myself. By then, Grandpa Eli had passed away. He died 2 years before everything came full circle. I went to his funeral quietly. I sat in the back. My family didn't see me until after the service. My mother looked older. Daniel looked annoyed. My father saw me near the exit and said, "So you came back for the inheritance?" I hadn't even said hello. I looked at him and said, "I came back for the only person here who ever helped me without charging me shame." Then I left. Grandpa Eli didn't have much to leave. An old watch, a few tools, a shoebox of letters I had sent him, and one folded note addressed to me. It said, "You were never the burden. You were the one carrying the weight." I kept that note in my wallet. 7 years after I left, the messages started. First from my mother. "Sophia, I know it's been a long time. Your father's business is struggling. Could you call?" Then Daniel. "Hey, Soph, water under the bridge? I've got an opportunity and could use advice." Then my father from a number I didn't recognize. "This is your dad. Your mother says you're doing well. Family helps family. Call me." No apology. "No, I'm sorry we kicked you out. No, I'm sorry we demanded your savings. No, I'm sorry we let you sleep in your car while telling people you abandoned us. Just call me." Then came the request. Daniel needed a co-signer for a commercial equipment loan. My parents needed help catching up on their mortgage. My father wanted me to put in a good word with someone at Meridian because his small catering supply company was trying to get vendor approval. That last one made me stare at my phone for a long time. They had no idea. My father's company, Bishop and Rose Supply, had applied to become a regional vendor for Meridian Harbor Group. Their application had been flagged for unstable financials, unpaid tax liens, and late delivery history. The final approval was scheduled to be reviewed during my first week as incoming chief operating officer. I didn't tell them. Maybe that sounds cold, but after 7 years of silence, they didn't ask how I was. They asked what I could do. Be honest in the comments. Would you have revealed the truth right there, or would you have waited until they embarrassed themselves first? The catalyst was supposed to be a professional milestone, not a family confrontation. Meridian was hosting its annual leadership gala at one of our downtown hotels. It was also the night Julian would formally announce my promotion to COO. Employees from several states were flying in, Investors would be there, local press, vendors, community partners. 3 days before the gala, my mother texted me. Your father received an invitation to some Meridian event. He says you might be there. Please don't make things uncomfortable. I laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, because after all those years, her first concern was still embarrassment. Then my father texted. We'll be attending Friday. This could be good for the family. Don't bring up old drama. Old drama. That's what they called the night they threw me out. Daniel texted right after. Dad says you know people there. Don't act weird. We need this contract. I didn't respond. On Friday night, I wore a black dress and tucked Grandpa Eli's old watch into the inside pocket of my blazer. It didn't match anything. I didn't care. Before the event began, Julian found me near the side entrance. You okay? He asked. My family is here. His expression changed slightly. Do you want them removed? I shook my head. No, I want them seated. He studied me. Are you sure? I've been sure for 7 years. The ballroom was beautiful. White tablecloths, gold lights, tall windows overlooking the city. 300 people talking over soft music and clinking glasses. I spotted my family at a vendor table near the middle. My father looked uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit. My mother kept smoothing her dress. Daniel was already networking with a drink in his hand, laughing too loudly. For almost an hour, they didn't see me. Then Daniel did. His face went blank for half a second before he recovered. He walked over with that same grin he used when he wanted something. Sophia, he said, arms open like we were close. Look at you. Fancy. I didn't hug him. Daniel. He lowered his arms awkwardly. Still holding grudges? My father joined us before I could answer. He looked me up and down. Well, at least you dressed appropriately. My mother whispered, Frank. But not firmly, never firmly. My father leaned closer. Listen, tonight matters. We're trying to secure a contract, and I don't need you making this about family issues. I wasn't planning to, Daniel smirked. Good, because honestly, Soph, this isn't the diner. These are serious people. There it was, the old pattern, the same little cut, polished for a nicer room. My father added, if someone asks, just say we supported you while you figured yourself out. No need to get into all that unpleasantness. I looked at him. Supported me? He stiffened. Don't start. My mother's eyes darted around. Sophia, please. Please what? Don't embarrass us. 7 years disappeared in one sentence. For a second, I was 25 again, standing beside a misspelled cake while my family asked me to finance my own disrespect. Then I felt the watch in my pocket. Grandpa Eli's watch. I breathed in. I won't embarrass you, I said. My father nodded like he had won. Then a chime rang through the ballroom. Julian stepped onto the stage. The room quieted. He spoke about Meridian's growth, the people who kept the company steady, and the future we were building. Then he smiled in my direction. And now, he said, it is my honor to introduce the person who has transformed how this company operates from the inside out. She started with us as an operations coordinator. She became the person we trust with our hardest problems. Tonight, she officially becomes Chief Operating Officer of Meridian Harbor Group. Please welcome Sophia Bishop. The applause started before I moved. At my family's table, my father's face changed slowly. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something close to fear. Daniel's mouth fell open. My mother covered hers with one hand. I walked to the stage calmly. Every step felt like crossing a bridge I had spent 7 years building with bleeding hands. Julian hugged me briefly, then handed me the microphone. I looked out at the room. Then I looked directly at my father. Thank you, I said. Most people see a title like Chief Operating Officer and assume the story behind it is clean. A good school, a straight path, the right connections. Mine wasn't clean. The room went still. I came to the city 7 years ago with one backpack, an old coat, and $390. I slept in my car behind a grocery store. I worked in a diner. I cleaned offices at night. I studied while exhausted. And for a long time, I was ashamed of that. My mother started crying quietly. I was ashamed because I had been taught that needing help made me weak, but being used made me loyal. My father looked down. I had one person who disagreed. My grandfather, Eli, gave me that $390. It wasn't enough to fix my life, but it was enough to remind me my life belonged to me. I pulled his watch from my pocket and held it up. He told me, "Don't become hard, become clear." I didn't understand that at 25. I understand it now. The applause came softly at first, then grew. I waited until it faded. Then I said, "Recently, I learned that people from my past had found out where I work. They reached out not to apologize, but to ask for money, influence, and signatures, a mortgage payment, a loan cosign, a vendor contract." The ballroom changed. My father's head snapped up. Daniel looked like he might stand. I didn't say their names. I didn't have to. And I want to say something tonight because I know I'm not the only person in this room who has confused being needed with being loved. My voice stayed steady. Help me is not the same as I'm sorry. Silence. A request is not accountability. A crisis is not an apology. And family is not a password that grants unlimited access to someone you broke when they were no longer useful. My father stood. "Sophia," he said loudly, "that's enough." 300 people turned to look at him. There it was again. Don't embarrass us. But this time he had done it to himself. Julian moved slightly, but I shook my head. My father's face reddened. "You always make everything about yourself." The microphone caught my quiet laugh. "No," I said. "I spent 25 years making everything about everyone else." He pointed at me. "After everything we did for you?" I looked at him, calm as still water. "What did you do for me, Dad?" He froze. "Because I have the old rent receipts. I have the bank transfers for groceries. I have the messages asking me to cover Daniel's bills. I have the voicemail from the night you told me not to come crawling back." My mother sobbed once. Daniel muttered. "This is insane," I continued. "And I have the vendor file for Bishop and Rowe Supply, which crossed my desk this week." My father went pale. That was the secret weapon. Not revenge, not shouting. Documents, patterns, truth. "Your company was not declined because of me," I said. "It was declined because the financials were unstable, delivery records were poor, and references would not verify your reliability. I did not sabotage you. I simply refused to rescue you from the consequences you created." My father gripped the back of a chair. I looked at Daniel. "And I will not co-sign your loan." Then my mother. "And I will not pay the mortgage on a house I was thrown out of." The silence was so complete, I could hear someone set down a glass near the back. My father tried one last time. "You think you're better than us now?" I shook my head. "No, I think I finally stopped believing I was beneath you." That was when the applause started. Not wild, not theatrical. Heavy. People stood slowly. Marlene was there, invited as my guest, wiping her eyes with a napkin. Julian stood beside the stage, watching me like he already knew I had won something more important than a title. My father left before the applause ended. Daniel followed him. My mother stayed. After the ceremony, I found her sitting alone in the hotel lobby, holding her purse with both hands like it was keeping her from falling apart. "Sophia," she said. I stopped a few feet away. She looked up at me. Her makeup had streaked under one eye. "I didn't know you slept in your car." I wanted that to mean something. I really did. But all I could think was, "You didn't ask." I said, "You knew I had nowhere to go." She flinched. "I told myself you were with friends," she whispered. "You told yourself whatever let you sleep." She nodded, crying harder. For the first time, she didn't defend him. She didn't say Daniel was under pressure. She didn't ask me to understand. She just said, "I'm sorry." I stood there for a long time. Those 2 words were small compared to the damage, but they were also the first honest thing she had given me in years. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. She nodded. "I know." "I'm not paying the mortgage." "I know." "I'm not fixing Daniel's life." "I know." "And I'm not pretending what happened was just family drama." My mother covered her mouth and cried silently. "If you want a relationship with me, it starts with the truth. Not money, not favors, not pretending. Truth." She whispered, "Okay." I left with Julian that night. 2 weeks later, a card arrived at my house. No request inside. No guilt. No family helps family. just my mother's handwriting. Sophia, I am sorry I stayed silent when silence protected me and abandoned you. I am sorry I taught you that love meant endurance. I am sorry I watched you carry what was never yours. I don't expect forgiveness. I only want you to know I finally understand that asking for help without apologizing first was another way of using you. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in the same box as Grandpa Eli's letters. Not because everything was healed. Because it was the first apology that didn't come with an invoice attached. My father has not contacted me since.
Daniel sent one message calling me dramatic and saying I ruined his future. I deleted it. My mother and I exchange short letters now. Slow ones. Careful ones. I don't know what we'll become. Maybe something. Maybe not. But I know this. I am not available for the version of family that only shows up when they need rescuing. If you've ever had to walk away from people who only loved you when you were useful, leave a comment. Someone reading it might need to know they are not wrong for choosing peace. Because help me is not I'm sorry. A hand reaching for your wallet is not the same as a heart taking responsibility. And sometimes the people who call you selfish are just angry you finally stopped financing your own humiliation. I didn't lose my family that night. I finally stopped mistaking shared blood for earned access to my life.